Misinformation. Misinformation is quite common today. Take this clip of conservative commentator Matt Walsh talking to Joe Rogan about trans issues. Matt Walsh is a man who made a documentary called What is a Woman? He appeared on Joe Rogan's podcast to talk about this documentary, and he claimed that there's millions of kids on puberty blockers. This is the conversation that ensued.
Barely exist anymore because they've all become transgender. They've all this is what they do now. There are a lot of people, doctors who got into the medical field and they did a certain thing, and then the transgender stuff came along, and that's their whole, that's what they do. Well, it's the same for a lot of plastic surgeons. That this is basically their whole business now, is doing the gender surgeries. And so you see the incentive for them. I mean, they have staked everything on this. They've also staked their professional reputation, because that's the other problem. Not only is it the political incentive and the money, but if they admit that they're wrong, then they're also admitting that they have horribly disfigured and abused thousands, maybe millions of kids.
How many people have had this done?
Depends on what. I don't think we have exact numbers, but if we're talking about the drugs, it's, I mean, millions.
You're talking about hormone blockers.
Yeah.
Millions of kids have been on hormone blockers? Really?
I'm sure someone's going to fact check me on it, but my guess is that we're into the millions now at this point. Yeah, that would be my guess. I can say for double mastectomies, the most recent, I read a
report that we're having these conversations.
Yeah, they will be, and I also, I actually think that this shouldn't be happening to.
It's a very small number, if that's right.
It says over the last 5 years, there were at least 4,780 adolescents who started puberty blockers and had a prior gender dysphoria diagnosis.
It says it's kind of undercounted, but
that would be a big undercounting.
Less than 1,000 people a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would guess, hundreds of thousands at this point.
This is a guy who made a documentary about trans issues, and he was wrong by literally orders of magnitude about the facts that he was reporting. This is a common issue today. Misinformation about election fraud has existed for as long as election fraud has been around. There have been legitimate attempts at election fraud over the years. You'd be a fool to think that if there's a way to cheat, people wouldn't try. In the 1982 gubernatorial elections in Illinois, 63 individuals were charged with voter fraud. In 2016, Russian hackers attempted to influence our election through propaganda and misinformation.
You can run the best campaign. You can even become the nominee. And you can have the election stolen from you.
We're not going to watch the whole 24
minutes. How can you win
minutes.
with Russian interference, though?
That's
what
real
I'm
thing.
scared about in 2020.
But right.
Because I think he's an illegitimate president that didn't really win. So how do you fight against that in 2020?
You are absolutely right.
He's an illegitimate president in my mind.
Would you be my vice presidential candidate? Folks, look, I absolutely agree.
Trump didn't actually win the election in 2016. He lost the election, and he was put into office because the Russians interfered.
Russia interfered with our election, attacked our democracy for the sole purpose of artificially placing someone at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. They were successful.
Trump knows he's an illegitimate president.
The president-elect, although legally elected, is not legitimate.
I don't see this president-elect as a legitimate president.
You said you believe that Russia's interference altered the outcome of the election.
I do.
We have a president who, if in fact it is proven, has been assisted by the Russians and may in fact not be a legitimate president.
Right-wing think tank, the Heritage Foundation, has an extensive list of instances of voter fraud occurring, some more serious and legitimate than others. The integrity of our elections is incredibly important. Without legitimate elections, democracy would cease to exist. The ideals and values that make up our country's foundation rest upon the integrity of our elections. The ideas of John Locke, which the Founding Fathers based many of their ideas upon, were such that if the social contracts between government and people were broken, that we should overthrow our government. Due to perceived misinformation about this election, there was an attempted insurrection on January 6th, 2021, to try to stop the certification of the election results. Many were injured and even killed. When you believe there is no legitimate electoral process to enact change, violence becomes justified. To cast a vote in the United States of America is an act of both hope and faith. When you drop that ballot in the ballot box, you do so with the confidence that every person named on the ballot will hold up their end of the bargain. The person who wins must swear an oath and live up to it. The people who come up short must accept the ultimate results and abide by the will of the voters and the rule of law. This faith in our institutions and laws is what holds up our democracy. If that faith is broken, if those who seek power accept only the results of elections that they win, then American democracy, only a few centuries old, comes tumbling down. Representative Benny G. Thompson in the January 6th committee's final report. A poll conducted in May of 2023 by Monmouth University found that 3 in 10 Americans believe that Joe Biden only won the 2020 election due to voter fraud. Republicans are the primary group that believes this to be true. 68% of Americans who identify as Republicans believe that the election was stolen. It is believed by many Republicans that the Dominion voting machines, which were used in 28 states, were rigged in favor of President Joe Biden. Republicans also stated that because Donald Trump's rallies in the campaign trail had much higher turnouts than Joe Biden's, that there's no way that Biden had as many voters as the election showed. The Trump administration also made claims about finding thousands of ballots with no names written down ballot.
Of this battle as part of the president's legal team. Sydney, good morning to you. Thank you for being here. Can you walk us through what has taken place here as you see it?
Yes, there has been a massive and coordinated effort to steal this election from we, the people of the United States of America, to delegitimize and destroy votes for Donald Trump, to manufacture votes for Joe Biden. They have done it in every way imaginable, from having dead people vote in massive numbers to absolutely fraudulently creating ballots that exist only voting for Biden. We've identified at least 450,000 ballots in the key states that miraculously only have a mark for Joe Biden on them and no other candidate. If you look at Florida, where things were done right, you can see that that's how the rest of the country should have gone. But they also used an algorithm to calculate the votes they would need to flip, and they used the computers to flip those votes from from Trump to Biden, and from other Republican candidates to their competitors also. I think Doug Collins had the race stolen from.
Mail-in ballots would be another contentious issue. Donald Trump declared victory on election night before the mail-in ballots had been counted. At this time, Republicans were in the lead. This is because Republicans tend to vote in person more than Democrats. However, once the absentee ballots were counted, Biden would be in the lead. Trump would claim this too as evidence of voter fraud.
The evidence we have uncovered, and we have so much evidence. I want to explain the corrupt mail-in balloting scheme that Democrats systematically put into place that allowed voting to be altered, especially in swing states, which they had to win. They just didn't know that it was going to be that tough because we were leading in every swing state by so much, far greater than they ever thought possible. While it has long been understood that the Democrat political machine engages in voter fraud from Detroit to Philadelphia to Milwaukee, Atlanta, so many other places. What changed this year was the Democrat Party's relentless push to print and mail out tens of millions of ballots.
In fact, there were so many claims made about the integrity of this election that I don't have time to cover every single one of them in this project. Social media is the major reason for this. A study done by Signal Labs found a 73% drop in online election fraud misinformation after Donald Trump was banned from social media websites. All it takes is for one influential person to make a claim, and it will be repeated by millions of people without any kind of fact-checking. We tend to look for information that supports what we already believe. Anything different makes us feel uncomfortable.
Secondly, we're in a situation where we have put together and you guys did it for our the President Obama's administration before this. We have put together, I think, the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics.
This was posted by Donald J. Trump as evidence of the election being fraudulent. This was just a clip of Joe Biden misspeaking. On the other side, Democrats do not believe that voter fraud had any significant impact in the results of the 2020 election. It is believed that there are legitimate explanations for the perceived transgressions, or that if there was fraud taking place, it would have no significant impact on the election outcome. Democrats believe that Joe Biden won the election fairly and that he is the duly elected president of the United States. They also believe that all the claims made by Donald Trump and the Republicans were made only to attempt to remain in power. They believe that Trump intended to subvert the electoral process and remain president for another term or longer.
A violent mob of insurrectionists assaulted law enforcement, vandalized sacred halls, hunted down elected officials, all for the purpose and attempt to overthrow the will of the people and usurp the peaceful transfer of power. All of it was fueled by lies about the 2020 election. But on this day, 2 years ago, our democracy held, because we, the people, as the Constitution refers to us, we, the people, did not flinch. We, the people, endured. We, the people, prevailed.
I tend to believe that the evidence supports the beliefs of the Democrats. For example, regarding the idea that Biden's turnout on the campaign trail was much lower than Trump's, much of the campaigning took place during the COVID-19 lockdowns. One of the major talking points of Biden's campaign was that Trump was irresponsible for holding large rallies as it could spread the disease. Biden would hold much smaller events as part of his campaign strategy. When it comes to the Dominion voting machines, Fox News settled a lawsuit from Dominion Voting Systems for $787.5 million. In the summary judgment, Delaware Superior Court Judge Eric Davis ruled that it is crystal clear that none of the statements relating to Dominion about the 2020 elections are true. The complaint stated that Fox made their claims about voting systems with reckless disregard for the truth. Sidney Powell would also walk back her claims about Dominion voting systems, claiming that no reasonable person thought her election fraud claims were fact. The claims about the found ballots seem to be entirely unsubstantiated. Sidney Powell made these claims in an interview with Fox on November 8, 2020. I showed a clip from this earlier. She claims that because there were no other names written down ballot, this must be evidence of fraud. She has not mentioned that undervoting, which is the process of marking a vote in one race but not in others that might be down the ballot, is a widespread practice. The only evidence for her claims is that there were 450,000 more votes for president in the combined states of Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, Michigan, and Wisconsin than in the down-ballot elections. There does not seem to be any evidence that these votes were even for Joe Biden. Following the January 6, 2021 attacks on the Capitol building, a bipartisan committee was formed in the U.S. House of Representatives to investigate claims of election fraud and the January 6th attack. They interviewed more than 1,000 people and reviewed more than 1 million documents. This committee was unable to find any evidence of widespread voter fraud that would have influenced the election. The committee found that Trump intentionally spread misinformation and used his position as president to pressure the Department of Justice to overturn the results of the election. Trump is currently facing both civil and criminal charges at a state and federal level. In conclusion, despite this being a highly contentious issue among American people, I believe this to be more important than a partisan issue. The integrity of our elections should be placed above Republican or Democrat. One influential man and his administration were able to convince 30% of our country to believe in something that is either entirely fabricated at worst or grossly exaggerated at best. Even though most Republican politicians today will accept the results of the 2020 election as valid, many voters still believe the election was stolen. I want to also say that in the future, it might not be the Republicans. It could be the Democrats doing the same thing. It's always cool when it's your side, but eventually it won't be your side. Eventually, someone on either side that's going to do whatever they can to try to overturn an election through whatever means necessary. So this is something we need to take very carefully and very seriously. Thank you.